Hi guys, and welcome back to the vlog. This is Susie from Sea Salt and Stitches. This is the first video in my Hemlock hack series. The Hemlock tee is a free downloadable t-shirt pattern from Grainline, and the link for that is in the description box below. I'm taking the Hemlock tee and doing 4 different hacks in this series. The first one is the short sleeve hack, and that's the one we're going to be doing today. So in this video we are trying to recreate this picture here that I found on Pinterest. It's a really simple hack. You're basically making a short sleeve version of the Hemlock tee. So in this video I will talk you through how to draft your own short sleeve pattern piece, and then I will give you a step-by-step instruction on exactly how to sew up the hemlock. It's a really simple t-shirt, really great for beginners. If you've never sewn a t-shirt before, this is a brilliant one to start with. I do sew everything up on my overlocker apart from the top stitching, but if you don't have an overlocker, you can use a regular sewing machine as well. It's not a problem at all. Just use a ballpoint needle and use your lightning stitch or zigzag stitch. You can get more information on how to sew with a regular sewing machine. I'll put a couple of links down below. I'm pretty sure Tilly and the Buttons has some stuff for you there. So if you'd like to know how to sew up the Hemlock tee and how to make a short sleeve hack, then keep watching. Right, to make the short sleeve pattern piece, you will need your original sleeve piece, tracing paper, a pen or pencil, a ruler, and I also have a French curve here. You don't have to have a French curve to do this, but I'm going to use one. But don't worry, you don't need one. So all I've done is I've measured how long I want my sleeve to be, and I've worked it out that I would like 4 inches long. So 4 inches plus I'm going to add on a 1/2 inch seam allowance just to be on the safe side. So I'm going to measure down 4 inches here and mark it on here. Actually 4.5 inches, right? And then I'm going to measure from here as well. I'm going to go 4.5 inches. 1/2 inches. This is a very slight curve here that attaches to the arm side, if you want to call it that, and it does have a very slight curve at the hem of the original sleeve piece. So I am just going to try and copy that as best I can. Okay, so I've drawn that in dark black pen so that I can then just trace off that little pattern piece there. I will link to where this tracing paper, where I buy this tracing paper. I just buy it on Amazon. You don't have to use this one with the grid lines, but I do like having pattern paper with grid lines on it. And if you do have pattern paper with grid lines on it, make sure that you line up the grid lines with the Grainline direction, so that you're not confusing yourself when you come to lay it on the paper. And now you have your short sleeve piece, that's your old piece, and your short sleeve piece. So for the short sleeve version of the hemlock, you need the original front piece, the original back piece, you need the neck binding piece, and you need your new short sleeve pattern piece. Now it's time to pin and cut out the fabric. Okay, this is the fabric I'm using for my short sleeved hemlock. I am not using the best space for cutting out because of filming this video. I would normally do this on the floor in my dining room, but for the sake of this video I am doing it on this tabletop, which really isn't big enough for this. What I just wanted to add while I'm doing this is that jerseys are often really wide, so instead of just folding it in half, I fold the two sides into the middle. It takes quite a lot of fiddling, and this is my least favourite bit of sewing actually, and because it's stripes we have to line up the stripes. You don't have to line up the stripes, but it's nice to. So I'm going to speed this up now. I'm just going to also add that this fabric is slightly see-through, which is handy in that I can see the lines below on this bit of the fabric, so it's actually making it easier. I don't have to use a whole pile of pins to line up, but it is just horrendous. And if there's a little bit of overlap in the middle, don't worry about that. The hemlock pieces aren't particularly wide, so they're going to fit there and there. There's not going to be any worry there. I'm just going to show you here that my place on fold for my front is on this side of the piece, which would mean if I want to put it on this fold, the piece is upside down, which I would really rather not. It's just easier if I have it up the way. I know this is quite a regular pattern. There's not really an up and a down, but just in terms of making sure that I am going to be matching the side stripes, I'm going to do it this way around, okay? Excuse my phone. So there aren't any pattern markings on this pattern apart from the notch that you line up the sleeve with. So that is all we're going to use, so it doesn't matter if you can't see anything else here on that side, okay? So all we need to do to make sure that the lines match up on this hemlock is that's my notch there, I'm going to position it at the top of one of the blue lines, and then I'm going to come over here, there's my notch, position it at the top of one of my blue lines. To mark your notch, but be careful, don't snip too much. Either put a little line with a coloured pencil or a very short snip, because the seam allowance is very small. It's only 3/8 of an inch. Right, please excuse the lighting. There is actually sunshine streaming through my windows today, which I can't complain about apart from when I'm trying to film. So I am sorry about that. But here we go. We have our front piece and our back piece is cut out, and the first thing we're going to do is we are going to sew them together at the shoulder seams. So right sides together as always. Sometimes it's quite hard to tell what is the right and wrong side of a stripe, but if you look very closely, you might not be able to see on this screen. This is the right side. This is off a stripe that's woven within it rather than printed on. And on the back side, if you look really closely at your stripes, quite a lot of them will have sort of like a teeny tiny white line. I'm saying white, whatever your contrasting color is. There'll be sort of an extra little stitch on the inside of your darker stripe, so look out for that because that's the inside, and then the outside doesn't have that. It's a beautifully crisp line. Okay, so anyway, right sides together, pin as much or as little as you are comfortable with, and we have a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance to sew this in, just on the overlocker, or you can do it on your regular sewing machine. It's no problem at all. If you're wondering what I'm doing right now, I'm actually just double checking that the stripes are lying on top of each other. If you've not cut it perfectly, this is a good opportunity to just tweak it as much as possible. Okay, so now that we have our shoulder seams sewn, we have essentially a neck hole here. So we're going to go and do our neck binding. So that's your long piece here, and my fabric curls a little bit, which is a bit annoying. We're going to do right sides together again, and we're going to fold it in half like this. Okay, and we're going to sew up this line here, again 3/8 of an inch. Okay. Right, so the neckband has been sewn, and what I've done is you then fold that piece in half, so you get something like that. And I've actually just pressed mine slightly to try and control the curl of the edge that's happening. And then what you want to do is fold it in half with your seam at one end, and with the other end, the other half, you're going to just mark it with a pin. Okay? Then you're going to fold it in half the other way, so position the pin and the seam line on top of one another. Okay. And mark the two folded sides. Okay. And we have basically just divided our neckband into quarters. So we're going to do the same with the neck opening here. So if you have already marked your center, front and back, you're one step ahead of me because I didn't. So if you haven't, don't worry, easy enough to do. Fold it in half like this. Make sure your two shoulder seams are lying exactly on top of one another. Okay, so that is it in half. So again, let's get those pins in. There we go. Okay, now don't forget that this shoulder seam is not halfway between the center front and center back. The front neck line is lower than the back, so therefore we can't use that as a quarter of our circumference here. So we have to do what we did with the neckband, and that is position our center front and center back on top of each other. Okay. Oh, my leg is going dead. Ow, getting pins and needles. Right. It doesn't have to be 100% jersey is fairly forgiving, so that's good, but it does help. So there we go. So this is actually our quarter mark here. Okay, and here again. Okay, open it up. So you have the right side of your fabric showing, and we have our pins. And I mean, it's up to you how you want to position this. Some people prefer to line up the seam of the neckband with this seam of the shoulder, and if that's what you like to do, then just make that one of your quarter marks and fold your fabric accordingly. It's a little harder to work that out, but not impossible. I have done it so that I'm having the seam, of my neckband will line up with my center back. It doesn't bother me in the slightest, so that's what I'm going to do. So the open edge of your neckband lies against the edge of your neck opening, and position your center back directly on it. Use that pin that you had marked your center back with and pin it. Pin the pins facing in towards the hole, essentially, and then making sure that your band is not twisted, which is harder than it sounds. Position your center front. Make sure all the things are lined up. You can take that other pin away. Get your other quarter marks. Just keep double checking that you haven't twisted your band. As I say, it's easier done than you think. So. Okay, and then up to you how much more you want to pin. The more you pin, the easier it's going to be to manage on your serger or overlocker, but it is totally up to you. I will do a little bit more pinning. So what you've got to do is you've got to sort of stretch your neckband. Don't stretch your bodice neck. Stretch the neckband and try and pin in the center of those other pins, those 4 pins that you've just done. The overlocker will help a lot with this because it has such a good grip on your fabric once it starts sewing on it that you are able to stretch the neckband without repositioning it, so to speak. You know, it's not going to pull the fabric out of the machine. As long as you don't pull too tight. And, you know, just try and remember all 3 ends of fabric need to be sitting on top of one another. Right, we're going to try and sew this up. I tend to start sewing my neckband just slightly off from the seam on my neckband. And what I do is remember it's 3/8 of an inch seam allowance again, which is your first line, well, on my overlocker anyway. And you sort of position it there. That foot has quite a lot of strength in it and does keep the fabric in position. And I just get the first couple of stitches sewn in. See the way I've got it at an angle? Like if I kept going straight down, you know, I'm gonna sew into my machine, into my top. But I mean, because we're sewing a circle, you sort of have to cut into your piece and then just position it in the right way. So I will try and show you. Make sure that your 3 pieces of fabric, so the 2 of the neckband and the 1 of the bodice, are still all lined up on top of one another, and we just sew in just ever so slightly. So see that I've already just got it. I've got the needle has literally just gone in maybe 1 or 2 stitches into the neckband, and now I'm repositioning my fabric so that it's slightly more in line with my 3/8. I'll take that pin off because it's getting very close, and stretching it so that it's so that all the fabric is lying flat and not bumpy underneath, and go. And just keep sewing, keep pulling this like this. So you're not pulling this underneath bodice, you're just holding it taut, so that the neckband is tight. The bodice is just natural, not tight and not loose. That's hard to explain. I just keep always checking that you have all 3 pieces of fabric on top of one another. If you don't, you will have a hole in your neckband and you're going to have to sew on top of it, and it gets very messy. I do it all the time, by the way, guys, so if it does happen, it's not the end of the world. Don't beat yourself up. It's easily done. So your neck opening is a circle. It's a curve that we are sewing. So you may be thinking, how do you do that curve on the overlocker? You just, because it's jersey, it just is so easy to work with, and you just keep bringing it straight down in front of you. Don't be worried about that. It's not going to be, just keep it straight in front and it will end up as a curve, I promise you. Just keep this taut. That's the most important thing. 2 most important things. Keep the neckband taut and keep the 3 pieces of fabric on top of one another. So see the way that was the beginning of my stitching. So it's at that angle. So all you're going to do is you're just going to sew straight across over the top of it. It'll cut that bit off, and just sew over your original stitching, you know, maybe about 1 inch or less. And this is the bit where you might end up with a hole in your neckband, so just make sure that you definitely cut off that section there with your knife. That's what you're cutting it with, and that should hopefully mean that you catch the fabric underneath. And then I should have just said you pull your fabric away and again just sew off the edge there. Then when we're doing our top stitching, we'll be top stitching this seam allowance down onto the bodice, and that will secure, you can tuck your loose threads in underneath like that, and that will secure your threads. So this is the scary bit, is checking to see what it's like. Any holes? I think I pretty much hold my breath every time I sew a neckband, so I'm always so nervous about sewing it. So it is puckered, but a press, and let me tell you, doing your top stitching will make so much difference actually. So I'm really pleased with that because I got that little blue line along the edge, which I really, really like. So yay, happy with that. So let's go and press, and we will do some top stitching. So you just want to press your neckband with a light iron. Remember to check that it's not too hot, and you're pressing the seam allowance away from the neckband towards the bodice the whole way around. And once you've done that, which I have already done, I'm starting at the back again. Remember to tuck your loose threads, or the end of your threads from your overlocking, down, sort of underneath the seam allowance, between the seam allowance and the bodice. And I am starting pretty much at the seam from the neckband, and I have my right needle, the sort of inner needle, is coming in maybe 1 millimeter below the seam that you've just sewn of the band to the bodice. And you want to try and keep that consistent the whole way around. So you do forward and back reverse stitch to secure your stitches as you would with normal ones. Make sure you've got your twin needle settings set up essentially. It's a straight stitch, 2 straight stitches on the top with a zigzag that the bobbin thread creates underneath, and that's what gives it the stretch element that you need in sewing jersey. So there, it's my reverse, and let's go. Just as you're moving your fabric around, just make sure that you're keeping the bodice as smooth as possible. So don't let it bunch up like that, because you're going to end up creating little wrinkles with your top stitching. Just keep smoothing it out, pushing it around, pulling it around, not pulling it, just smoothing it. And with your snips around your neck, nice and easy, you can just snip your loose threads. And I would give it another little press just to secure your stitching that you've done. And that is the hardest bit of the hemlock, and it's not even that hard. So now we're going to do, we're going to sew our sleeves on, and then we're going to sew up the side seams and do some hemming, and we will be done. Brilliant. So we have a lovely neckband with our top stitching, and now we're going to sew our little sleeves onto the sides here. So lay it out right side up the way, like this, and get your sleeve pieces. And slightly harder to figure out when you're doing a short sleeve, but just remember, here, I'll just show you here. This is our sleeve piece here. The long end is the bit that attaches to the bodice, and then this is our hem that we are going to make. So right sides together as always. Remember, we put our notches in, hopefully you remembered. I've got a little notch there and a little notch there. And because the hemlock sleeve pieces are symmetrical, you know, you can use either one on either sleeve. There's not a left and a right, so to speak, which there would maybe be with other t-shirt patterns that have a proper arm size shape. So just line up the ends of the sleeve pieces to the notches and pin, and then as you remember there's a slight curve in this, so just pull back the sleeve piece so that it's in line with the bodice pieces and pin in place. As many or as little pins as you like. Okay, and then we're gonna sew that down. Saving time, I'm just gonna go ahead and pin the other sleeve. I haven't bothered snipping that because my overlocker will do that for me. So just make sure that you have right sides together. And make sure, see what just happened there? That accidentally flicked in. But make sure that doesn't get pinned that way, because then you'll have that sticking out of your shoulder seam. See the way I've just pinned it to that notch? So I'm actually just going to use that notch to help keep this fabric clear from the sewing, and I'm going to sort of keep it out of the way, keep this straight. Hope you can see that. I'm going to sort of position it in there. Pin comes out, obviously, guys, and make sure that the fabric is sitting on top of each other, and let's go. So let's press these to sort of smooth the seam. Right, we have sleeves that I have pressed that look like this. So now we're going to do side seams together. So fold it right sides together. It's always right sides together. Get your shoulder seams, give it a shake to help get it into shape. Line up your, let's see if I can show you here, the seam of your sleeve, that sort of corner. I would pin that first. If you have stripes, start pinning your stripes together, because this is where it makes all the difference. You're going to be sewing these stripes together now. So if you want nicely matched stripes, pin as much as possible. No, it's really up to you. Pin on the stripes, so that definitely helps. So you can see that actually my one piece is slightly shorter than the other, but I'm focusing on these stripes because to me that's more important. We can straighten up the hem closer to, you know, once we're at that stage. That doesn't matter too much. Just of course make sure the t-shirt is lying smoothly, which I think it is. I'm just going to pull that a bit more. Okay, so do the other side. We're going to be sewing along here, here, and then of course on the other side, all the way up there and all there. Right. Now, watch what I do to get around the underarm here. So obviously you can see it's an angle that if you keep sewing would cut into your fabric. So some people get worried about overlockers getting to corners. It's really, really easy. I'll show you what to do. Okay, we're at the corner now, roughly. I'm just making sure my fabric is in position. So, just watch. I am now moving. Because the overlocker is holding tight to the fabric it has already sewn, or is in the process of sewing, it's
it's not going to move out of position there, but you can reposition the fabric that is going towards it, and just make sure it's smooth here so that there's no wrinkles that it's going to sew over. Make sure there's no pins in the way, and I'm also making sure that my stripes are matched, and just obviously don't sew over cut your finger with that either. So, and go. And that's that. I'll show you what it's like once I get to the end. And there you have just a nice curve. It's not a right angle, it doesn't need to be. Just a curve like that. Okay, so we're going to do the other side. And there we have a nearly finished t-shirt. Yay! I'm really loving how this is coming together. So all we need to do now are hemming. Just a little tip I have for giving sort of the look of ready to wear when you don't have a cover stitch machine. I actually overlock the edge of your hem where you're going to hem, so the sleeves and then also the bottom there. I haven't done the bottom yet. And then you turn over just slightly and top stitch from the top, obviously, with your double needle. And then that sort of gives the look of a cover stitch finish, even though you don't have one. You don't have to do that because the jersey doesn't fray, so it's not like you need to overlock it to stop it from fraying. It's really just a personal choice. But it looks quite nice from the inside. It does look a little bit more like ready to wear. So I'm going to do a really small hem on this, pretty much just turn over that overlocking stitch, maybe ever so slightly more, half again maybe, and then I'm going to top stitch that down. And then again for here, this thread that's there, I'm going to be tucking that in underneath and catching it in place. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. I'm going to start on the underarm section because I'm going to be doing back tacking, and you know it's a bit messy seeing that, so if it's on the underarm you don't really see it. And I am not pinning because I sort of feel my way around, but that comes with practice. So if you are just starting out, I maybe suggest pin your hem in place first and then sew it down, okay? So we have our hem sleeves done. I don't know if you can see that. It just sort of looks like a cover stitch with your double top stitching on the top. And here you can really see the shape of the hemlock being just a massive rectangle with the sleeves on the side. And just remember that it's exactly the same process for making the long sleeved one. So if you want to make the original sleeve piece rather than the short sleeve version, it's exactly the same. So all we've got left to do is our hem for the bottom of the t-shirt. And again, you can either overlock that and turn it over, or else just turn it over whatever amount you want. You can put it on, pin it, and see where you want it to be. And then again, top stitching with the twin needle there as well. I actually prefer curving my hems because I find it more flattering, so I'm going to do that. And I'll show you what I do. So I use my French curve. I'll link down below where I get mine from, just on Amazon, but there's lots of different ones you can buy. And I'm going to keep the length there the same. The issue with doing a curved hem is the side seams, really. If you end up doing your curve on a point, it is very hard to turn that over and stitch smoothly. So the way you get around that is by, I'm just going to draw a bit of a curve here. You might not be able to see this. I hope you can. And you can do this on your pattern piece. It's obviously a lot easier to just cut your fabric out like this initially rather than drawing on this. But this is a good way of how you can take like a t-shirt you've already made and put a curved hem on it if you want. So what you have to do is make sure that you are approaching your the curve. You're actually going to do convex and a concave curve side by side, sort of like a really gentle S, and you want to make sure that when you're reaching the side seam that you are at right angles to it. And the more gentle the curve, the easier this is going to be to hem, because it is pretty tricky. So I'm actually even and just to be very controversial, I mean obviously this isn't the most professional way to do this. You really should be doing this on your pattern piece. But as I say, see, I didn't have my side hem. Okay. So I'm just gonna find the middle of my t-shirt. Make sure I've got this sitting totally flat. Okay, so that's the middle there. I'm gonna put a mark in there. So I have drawn to there. Yeah. As I say, so I'm going to cut through both layers. Sometimes maybe you want to do a longer back to your front. This is how you do it, both the same length. So I am going to, as I say, controversial. The center, and now I'm going to fold it on itself. I just do it this way because I don't want to cut through 4 layers of fabric, because I find that's just not as easy to control as 2 layers. And now that's that. And again, now I'm going to cut here. Okay, and now we have t-shirt with a curved hem, and pinning is a little trickier when you're dealing with a curved hem, but because you've got this nice very gentle curve here, it's not too difficult to pin. I'm just going to turn it up by about 1 centimeter, slightly more, and pin it. So let me show you. By the way, this is only for jersey fabrics. You wouldn't be able to do this with woven fabrics. You would have to put, I mean you could, but you would need to hem it with bias binding or else do a self-facing. So here you see it's starting to get a little bit wrinkled. I tend to start sewing my t-shirt hems just close to one of the side seams. And if you're sewing a curved hem, just try your best not to let the fabric pucker. You know, it does require a little bit of manipulation, moving the fabric and smoothing it around, just to make sure that you don't get little puckers that will not make, I mean it won't lie straight. There you have your short sleeved hemlock tee. I'm so pleased with how this turned out. Such a great everyday t-shirt. I could see myself wearing this all the time in the summer whenever that weather heats up for us finally. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you do make your own, then let me know. I'd love to see. And if you want to find out how to make the cowl neck hack or a colour block hack or a ruffle sleeve hack, then either keep watching if you're watching the playlist, or click in the description box down below for the different tutorials. Bye guys!